Welcome back, deep divers. Today, we're going deep, like really deep, into something I think a lot of you have been curious about.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
It's the connection between, well, melancholy and creativity
Okay, interesting.
and, what it means to be human. Like the whole big picture. You actually sent in this excerpt from a paper, Karl Jaspers on melancholy.
Alina Enfeld. Right. I think I've read that one.
Yeah. It dives into the work of Karl Jaspers.
Philosopher and psychiatrist. Fascinating guy.
He actually had some pretty radical ideas about how these things all fit together. It's like, get this, he actually thought that melancholy
Mm.
could actually spark creative inspiration,
Mm.
even mental illnesses like schizophrenia.
Whoa, that's a pretty bold claim. I mean, we tend to think of melancholy as a bad thing, right?
Right. But his work on figures like Van Gogh, Strindberg,
Kierkegaard, Nietzsche. Yeah, they all fit in there somewhere.
it really makes you stop and think.
Definitely makes you question some assumptions.
So let's get into it. The paper starts by explaining Jasper's phenomenology of melancholy. And
Oh, that's a mouthful.
I know, right? What did he actually mean by that?
Well, you see, Jaspers, he wasn't a fan of just slapping labels on mental states like melancholy.
So he didn't like simple definitions.
Yeah, exactly. He felt like that really oversimplified things. He was way more interested in how each person experiences melancholy. You know, like the unique ways it shows up in their lives.
So instead of like a textbook definition, he was more focused on the nitty-gritty reality of what it actually feels like to be melancholic.
100%. And through all his observations, he started noticing these common threads. Things like time feeling distorted, a sense of just emptiness, and even sometimes just feeling overwhelmingly guilty or insignificant.
I mean, you don't have to have a diagnosis to relate to that, right?
No, not at all.
I think a lot of us have felt those things at some point. Like, think about a time where you felt stuck, just stuck in a moment.
Or like you weren't good enough.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Jaspers would say, like, those feelings, those are actually central to what melancholy is all about.
He absolutely would. But to really understand where Jaspers was coming from, I think we need to look at how he went up against some of the theories that were popular during his time. Guys like Victor Emil von Gebsettel and Erwin Strauss.
What was their take? I mean, was it totally different from Jaspers?
They were very focused on, well, they called them vital disturbances, or sometimes inhibition of becoming.
Okay, I'm trying to wrap my head around that.
Basically, they were saying that melancholy comes down to some kind of like biological hiccup or maybe a roadblock in, how we develop as people.
So like a glitch in the system of life itself.
Yeah, something like that. But Jaspers, he wasn't buying it. He thought it was way too simplistic.
Way too simplistic, okay.
He argued that, trying to squeeze like the vastness of human existence into a purely scientific box, he said that's just impossible.
Right.
You can't just...
You can't quantify everything.
No, you can't.
Okay, and this is where things get really interesting, because this critique, this is what pushes Jaspers toward a much more philosophical view of melancholy. And he starts talking about limit situations.
Limit situations, yes.
So what are those?
Okay, well, think of those experiences that just push you to the edge of what you can handle.
Okay.
Those moments that force you to confront, like, the big questions about life, about death, suffering, guilt, your place in the universe. All of it.
Whoa, that's intense.
It is. But those are limit situations.
So wait, is he saying that melancholy is one of those edge of existence kind of things?
He is. Because he believed that melancholy could really wake you up to the limitations of your own understanding.
Yeah.
Make you face, how small you are compared to the vastness of the world. It's almost like being jolted out of your everyday life and then suddenly, you're forced to look into this abyss.
Okay, so if this is like a limit situation, if it's pushing you to your limit,
right?
How could that possibly be a good thing?
Well, that's the paradox that Jaspers is pointing at. It's that these limit situations, even though they're incredibly painful, they can actually open you up to growth and to self-discovery.
That's pretty wild.
It is. There's this quote in the paper. He says that even madness has a human significance, that it can reveal what he potentially is. It's like going through those tough experiences could unlock something deep inside you.
So like facing your darkest moments, even something as intense as madness could actually be a way to like understand yourself better.
That's exactly what he was getting at.
Right.
And this is what leads us to his link between melancholy, creativity, and what he called the other.
Okay, now you've got me intrigued. What is this other?
Well, Jaspers believed that artists, and especially religious figures, particularly those who were considered melancholic or even mad,
Okay.
they actually had this unique ability to tap into something beyond, well, beyond our everyday understanding.
Like they were seeing a side of reality that most of us miss.
Exactly. Like a hidden dimension or a secret frequency. And he points to examples all throughout history, like think about Greek tragedies.
Oh, yeah?
Shakespeare, Cervantes, even visual artists like Dürer.
Oh, well.
They were all wrestling with themes of madness and melancholy. And it's almost like by going to those places, they were opening this channel for deeper creative expression.
You know, it makes me think about all the art and literature that really moves me. It's funny how so much of it deals with those, like, dark, heavy parts of human experience.
Yeah.
It's not all happy, you know.
No, it's not. And Jaspers would probably say, that's not a coincidence at all.
I think you're right. It's really interesting to consider. And before we go any further, can we unpack this idea of, well, Jaspers compared melancholy to schizophrenia.
Yes.
He seems to think there's a difference there.
There is a subtle difference. He noticed that melancholy often leads to a kind of standstill. But schizophrenia, he saw that as something potentially much more dynamic, even creative, especially in how it expresses what he called metaphysical visions.
Metaphysical visions. So, like, how could schizophrenia be creative?
Well, think about Van Gogh's paintings. Jaspers actually described them as, well, as vibrating. Vibrating with this intensity that just seems to come from somewhere else entirely, like outside of our world. It almost makes us question our own existence.
I like that how you describe his paintings as vibrating. That's really interesting.
It really highlights how those states of being, melancholy, mental illness, it's like they're tied to a totally different way of seeing the world. And sometimes that can lead to incredible art.
It's fascinating.
It is. And to understand Jaspers' thinking even more, I think we need to talk about two figures that were hugely influential on him, Kierkegaard and Nietzsche.
Oh, yes. Two very intense thinkers. What was it about them that spoke to Jaspers?
Well, both Kierkegaard and Nietzsche, they were both deeply melancholic individuals. And they actually became central figures in Jaspers' own philosophy. And both of them believed that traditional philosophy, it had just become too obsessed with logic and reason.
So it was ignoring, like, the darker parts of being human.
Yes, the more existential parts. They were trying to dig deeper, trying to grapple with the parts of life that reason and logic just couldn't explain.
So they were looking into the shadows.
Exactly. And Jaspers, he believed that what he called their shattered destinies actually gave them access to truths that most people, people who haven't faced similar depths of experience, they just wouldn't understand.
It's like they went through the fire and came out the other side with these insights.
Yeah, it's like their suffering, their struggle that actually gave them unique insights.
It's almost counterintuitive, right? Because if they were so melancholic, how did they even manage to do such groundbreaking work?
Right. It's like, how do you create when you're in that state of mind?
Yeah.
Well, Jaspers suggests that they were actually grappling with the anxieties of their time.
Yeah.
He said it was almost suicidal, the way they endlessly reflected and questioned existence itself. Like their melancholy, it was fueling their exploration.
So instead of being something that they had to overcome, it was almost like their melancholy became the driving force behind their work. Wow.
It's powerful stuff. And this brings us to one of Jaspers' most profound ideas. He said that melancholy itself can be a cipher for something much, much bigger.
Wow.
Something he called transcendence.
Okay, I am ready to unpack transcendence.
Yeah.
What did he actually mean by that?
Well, for Jaspers, transcendence, it's not necessarily about, traditional religion.
Not about a specific god or...
No. It's more about the ultimate ground of being, the source of meaning and purpose that we can never fully grasp.
It's more about the big why.
Yes, the big why behind everything. And he suggests that experiencing melancholy, as difficult as it is, it can be a really powerful invitation to look beyond the everyday world and wrestle with those big questions, those big why questions.
Like, why are we here? What's the point of all of this?
Exactly. And he's suggesting that, if we were just constantly chasing happiness, we might actually miss out on those deeper questions.
So it's like our modern obsession with being happy might actually be preventing us from engaging with these deeper, more meaningful parts of life.
That's exactly what he was saying. And remember, Jaspers, he was writing at a time when existentialism was taking root. And like a lot of the existentialists, he was really worried that modern society, we were becoming too fixated on just material comfort and surface-level pleasures. Like we were losing touch with the big questions that really make life, well, meaningful.
So he's suggesting that melancholy, with all its discomfort,
Yes.
it might actually be pushing us toward a more authentic way of being alive.
Yeah.
Because it forces us to face the tough stuff, the stuff that really matters.
You got it. And that's where his idea of ciphers comes in. You know, he uses this term cipher to describe something that acts as a symbol or a clue that points towards something much bigger.
Like a breadcrumb trail.
Yeah, something like that. But something beyond our ability to directly comprehend. And melancholy, with all its paradoxes, well, it becomes a cipher for this transcendence. It hints at something vast and mysterious that we can only kind of glimpse indirectly.
So instead of trying to like define it and categorize melancholy, we should be seeing it as an invitation, like an invitation to explore the unknown, to dive into this mystery of existence.
Beautifully put. And that idea, it's really at the heart of his view of the link between melancholy and creativity. He argued that people who grapple with melancholy, who really stare into that abyss, they often come out with this unique perspective, a perspective that allows them to create art that really resonates, with something deep within us.
Like they're translating their experience of the other into a language that we can actually understand, even if we haven't been through those same depths of melancholy.
You're exactly right. And this takes us back to, well, all those artists and thinkers that Jaspers kept coming back to.
Yeah.
Van Gogh, Strindberg, Kierkegaard, Nietzsche, they all struggled with melancholy, with those other limit situations. And their work, it really reflects those struggles. And it continues to move and inspire us.
So it's like their melancholy, it almost became a lens through which they saw the world.
Yes.
And it's a lens that allowed them to create art that just goes beyond our everyday experience.
That's a really powerful way to put it. And, you know, it links back to how he criticized those who tried to reduce the human experience into these neat little scientific explanations.
Yeah.
He's arguing that there's something more, something that defies those categories and control.
So maybe instead of always trying to fix melancholy or explain it away, we should actually be listening to what it's trying to tell us. Maybe it's a signpost. Maybe it's pointing us towards something deeper, something that could enrich our lives, something that could inspire real creativity.
That's one of the most important takeaways from Jaspers' work. But it's a challenging idea, especially in a culture that's so fixated on happiness and avoiding anything that feels unpleasant.
It makes you wonder, right? If we're constantly trying to push away the darkness, the melancholy, are we actually missing out on a chance for a deeper understanding?
And a deeper connection.
Maybe even a chance for real creative expression. That's a really profound question that Jaspers leaves us with.
It is. And, you know, it connects directly to the work of Kierkegaard and Nietzsche.
Yeah.
Those two thinkers, they really embrace that darkness, that existential angst. And their work is so much stronger for it.
Absolutely. And Jaspers saw that direct connection, right, between their shattered destinies and their ability to tap into these profound truths. It's like their struggles, they actually became a source of strength and insight, like a painful but illuminating way of seeing the world.
Exactly. Now, remember how Jaspers said that each era seems to have its own kind of, well, its own form of madness. He saw a connection between schizophrenia and the early 20th century.
Interesting.
He suggested that the art created by people experiencing schizophrenia was tapping into something, into the spirit of the times.
So even something like schizophrenia, something that seems so chaotic,
right,
could actually reflect the deeper cultural and philosophical currents of an era.
That's right. And it's through the lens of schizophrenia, with its fractured perception and its metaphysical visions, that artists like Strindberg and Van Gogh, well, they were able to create these works that just captured something essential about the human condition during their time.
It's like they were holding up a mirror to society.
Yeah.
Reflecting all the anxieties, all the uncertainties. That search for meaning that really defined the early 20th century.
Exactly. And that leads us to a really crucial point in Jaspers' thinking, his whole concept of communication and how it relates to these deeper, more existential truths.
Okay.
He argued that those truths, they can't just be communicated directly, not through, logic or reason. They have to be expressed indirectly, through ciphers, through art, through actually living through those limit situations like melancholy.
So those artists and thinkers who are wrestling with these really intense inner experiences,
right,
They're almost like translators.
Yeah.
They're translating those experiences into a language that the rest of us can understand.
Exactly, even if we haven't been through those depths ourselves.
It's amazing to think about.
It is, and engaging with their work, engaging with those ciphers, that's how we can start to grasp those deeper truths for ourselves. And it's not about finding clear answers, it's about opening ourselves up to the mystery.
Right. To those questions that don't have easy solutions. This is all so incredibly thought-provoking.
It is.
And it makes me wonder, if Jaspers were alive today, what would he say about our era?
That's a great question.
Like, what kind of madness would he see reflected in our art and our culture? What are the deeper truths that we're struggling to express?
You know what? I think that's a question for each and every listener to ponder. What anxieties do you see in the art and culture of our time? What longings, what struggles for meaning are being expressed? What ciphers are calling out to you, inviting you to explore these deeper mysteries?
This has been such a rich and challenging deep dive so far. I feel like we've only just scratched the surface of Jasper's ideas.
We have, but I think that speaks volumes about the depth and the complexity of his thinking. He doesn't give us, easy answers. But he invites us to just keep asking those difficult questions, to embrace the mystery, and to see melancholy not as a weakness, but as a potential path, a path to profound insight and creative expression.
Beautifully put. And before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I'd love to hear your concluding thoughts on this whole journey, this journey into melancholy, creativity, and Jasper's perspective on the human condition. What are your final takeaways?
I think Jaspers really reminds us that being human, it's not all sunshine and roses.
Right.
It's this mix of joy and sorrow, reason and intuition, clarity and mystery.
Yeah.
Melancholy. Well, as uncomfortable as it can be,
Yeah.
it's a vital part of that mix.
It's like he's saying, instead of trying to run from it or, cure it like it's some kind of disease,
Right.
we should learn to sit with it.
Yeah.
Listen to what it's trying to tell us about ourselves and about the world around us.
Exactly. And that's where creativity comes in.
Yeah.
Think of it as a way to kind of process those whispers of melancholy, to turn those heavy emotions, those heavy feelings into something real, into something meaningful.
And creativity doesn't have to be like just painting a picture or writing a song.
No, not at all.
It could be, I don't know, coming up with new ways to solve problems, expressing yourself, honestly in your relationships, even just finding new ways to connect with the world.
Absolutely. In the broadest sense, creativity, it can be like this lifeline, especially when you're feeling lost, when you're in the dark. It can help you find meaning, find purpose, even when things are really tough.
This deep dive, it's really opened my eyes to how much more there is to being human than just what we see on the surface.
Right.
There are these depths to explore, these mysteries to ponder, and this whole realm of the other just waiting to be discovered.
And melancholy, as challenging as it can be, it could be the key to unlocking that door.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about how Jasper saw melancholy as this pathway, to something bigger, to this transcendence.
Right.
But what about when melancholy leads to, like, stagnation? Like he said, it often does. Where does that fit into everything?
That's a really great question. Remember how Jaspers made that distinction between melancholy and schizophrenia?
Yeah. He saw melancholy often leading to this standstill, but schizophrenia, he saw it as something much more dynamic, even creative, especially in the way it expresses what he called those metaphysical visions.
So it's like melancholy gets you stuck in your head. But schizophrenia, it's like it blasts you out of your comfort zone into this uncharted territory.
That is a fantastic way to put it. And Jaspers, he uses Van Gogh again as an example to illustrate this point.
Okay.
Remember how he described Van Gogh's paintings as vibrating with an intensity that seems to come from outside of our world?
Right, yeah.
It's like Van Gogh, through his art, was channeling something from that realm of the other that most of us just can't access.
It's really interesting to think about those metaphysical visions. Like maybe they're actually a way of breaking free from the constraints of our everyday reality, a way of seeing the world from a totally different perspective. Exactly. And that links back to Jasper's idea that each era has its own form of madness, a way of experiencing the world that really challenges those prevailing norms. And that opens up all these new possibilities for understanding.
So is he saying that what might be labeled as madness in one era
Yes.
could actually be the key to unlocking all these new insights and creative breakthroughs.
You got it. Think about it this way. If everyone saw the world in the exact same way, there wouldn't be any progress.
Right.
No innovation, no art to challenge us to see things differently. It's in those moments of rupture, those times where, where our understanding of the world gets shaken up a little bit. That's when we have the potential to create something new, something truly meaningful.
It makes you think about all those artists and all those thinkers throughout history who were considered mad or, eccentric back in their day.
Yeah.
But now we celebrate them as groundbreaking visionaries. Maybe they were just tapping into a different frequency, a different way of seeing the world that was just ahead of its time.
Exactly. And that's what's so exciting about Jaspers' work. He challenges us to look beyond those preconceived notions of what's normal and what's abnormal.
Right.
To consider the possibility that even those experiences that we label as madness might hold a key to unlocking deeper truths about ourselves and about the world around us.
It's mind-blowing. Okay, so if Jaspers saw madness as having this potential for creative breakthroughs, where does that leave melancholy? I mean, does he think that it can be a source of creativity too, even if it's, not as dynamic as schizophrenia?
Another great question. Remember how we talked about those ciphers, those symbols or clues that point towards something bigger? Something beyond our direct understanding.
Yeah.
He saw melancholy as one of those ciphers, a gateway, if you will, to a deeper understanding of the human condition.
So even though melancholy, it might not lead to those, explosive bursts of creative energy like schizophrenia can.
Right.
It still has the potential to open us up to something really profound.
Exactly. Think about it. When you're feeling melancholic, you're way more likely to be introspective, to question those assumptions that you have, to look for deeper meaning in the world around you. And those are all qualities, they're all qualities that can fuel creative exploration.
Melancholy almost forces you to slow down.
Yeah.
To pay attention to those details that you might miss otherwise. To really feel things on a deeper level.
Exactly. And that kind of heightened awareness, that can be so incredibly valuable for any kind of creative process. I mean, whether you're a painter or a writer or a musician or even just someone who is, just trying to find more meaning in your everyday life.
I'm really rethinking my whole relationship with melancholy after this deep dive. Instead of seeing it as something to avoid or to cure, maybe it's something to embrace, something to be explored, something that can be channeled into creative expression.
That is a fantastic insight. And I think it's a really relevant message for today, especially in a culture that often prioritizes, just happiness and positivity at the expense of really exploring, the full spectrum of human emotion.
And if we're always trying to push away the darkness, if we're always trying to push away the melancholy, are we also pushing away a part of ourselves that holds the potential for growth, for insight, maybe even for these creative breakthroughs?
That is a powerful question to consider, and it brings us right back to the heart of Jaspers' work. The idea that to truly understand what it means to be human, we need to engage with the totality of the experience, the light and the shadow, the reason and the other.
So we can't just pick and choose.
No.
Pick and choose the parts of ourselves that we like and just ignore the rest. We have to embrace it all. Even the parts that make us uncomfortable. Even the parts that make us feel, I don't know, a little bit scared.
That's exactly it. And you know what? That's where Jaspers' ideas about communication become really, really important. He argued that, that these deeper truths about the human condition, they can't be communicated directly. Not through logic or reason. They have to be expressed indirectly, through symbols, through art, through the lived experience of those limit situations like melancholy.
It's almost like artists and thinkers, those who are wrestling with these intense inner experiences, they're kind of like translators.
Yeah.
They translate those experiences into a language that the rest of us can actually understand.
You nailed it. And it's through, engaging with their work, with those ciphers they offer us, that's when we can start to grasp those deeper truths.
Yeah.
And it's not about finding those clear, simple answers. It's about opening ourselves up to the mystery, to those questions that maybe don't have clear solutions.
It's also thought-provoking. Okay, so if Jasper saw madness as this potential pathway to these creative breakthroughs and melancholy as a cipher for deeper understanding, did he think that there was like a connection between the two?
That's a fantastic question, and it leads us to one of the most fascinating parts of Jasper's work. His exploration of the relationship between melancholy and schizophrenia, and what he called the world historical significance of certain individuals.
Okay, hold on. World historical significance. That sounds pretty intense.
It is.
What did he mean by that?
He believed that, that certain people throughout history, they played this unique role in shaping how we understand the world and how we understand ourselves.
Okay.
He called these individuals world historical figures because their ideas and their actions, they have this ripple effect that extends far beyond, their own time and place.
If we're talking like Socrates,
Yeah.
Jesus, Buddha, people like that. People whose ideas have really like fundamentally shaped the course of human history.
Yes, exactly. And what's really fascinating is that Jaspers, he saw this connection between those world historical figures and the experiences, the experiences of melancholy and schizophrenia.
Interesting.
He argued that these individuals, they were often grappling with profound inner turmoil,
Right.
with unconventional ways of seeing the world. And because of that, they were able to tap into something deeper, something that really resonated with what he called the collective unconscious of humanity.
Like they were tuning into a frequency that most people couldn't even hear. And then they translated that frequency into ideas and actions and works of art that had this lasting impact on the world.
That's a great way to put it. And it's important to note that Jaspers didn't necessarily see melancholy and schizophrenia as like prerequisites for a world historical significance. He knew that lots of people experience those things without achieving that level of impact.
So not every melancholic or schizophrenic person is going to like change the world.
No, of course not. But what Jaspers was suggesting is that these states of being, that are often seen as negative, as pathological, they can actually be pathways to profound insight and creative expression. And in some individuals, those insights and those expressions, they can have this ripple effect, that can shape the course of human history.
It's making me rethink this whole concept of genius. Maybe those individuals, those people that we consider geniuses, they're not just really smart or super talented.
No.
Maybe they're also people who can tap into something deeper, something beyond the realm of ordinary experience.
That is a brilliant insight, and it connects back to Jasper's idea that each era has its own form of madness. Maybe those individuals that we label as geniuses they're just the ones who are most in tune with the madness that defines their time.
So it's not just about individual brilliance, it's about being in the right place, the right time.
Yeah.
Being able to channel the zeitgeist, the spirit of the age in a way that connects with others.
Exactly. And what's fascinating is that Jaspers, he saw this connection between the rise of schizophrenia in the early 20th century and the emergence of new forms of art and expression, especially in visual art.
So he's saying that the artists of that time,
right,
even the ones who weren't, clinically diagnosed with schizophrenia,
right,
they were still tapping into that same energy, that same way of seeing the world.
That's right. Think about the works of artists like Picasso, like Kandinsky, like Dali. Their art was revolutionary. It challenged all the traditional rules of perspective and representation, and it really resonated with a world that was undergoing all this massive social, political, technological upheaval.
It's almost like those artists, they were giving like a visual form to the anxieties and the uncertainties of their time. Like they were expressing through their art what words just couldn't say anymore.
Exactly. And that brings us to another really crucial point in Jasper's thinking. His concept of communication and how it relates to these deeper, more existential truths. He argued that these truths, they can't be communicated directly, not through logic, not through reason. They need to be expressed indirectly, through symbols, through art, through the lived experience of those limit situations, like melancholy and schizophrenia.
Just like artists and thinkers, they're grappling with these really intense inner experiences.
Right.
And they're able to like translate those experiences into a language that we can understand, even if we haven't been through those same depths ourselves.
You got it. And it's through, well, it's through engaging with their work, with those ciphers they offer us. That's how we start to understand those deeper truths ourselves. And it's not about, finding all the clear answers, but about opening ourselves up to the mystery, to those questions that might not have clear-cut solutions.
It's all so incredibly thought-provoking.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes me wonder, if Jaspers were alive today, I mean, what would he say about our era? What kind of, I don't know, what kind of madness would he see in our art?
Yeah.
In our culture? What deeper truths are we struggling to express?
Now that is a fascinating question to ponder. What anxieties, what longings, what struggles for meaning do you see reflected in the art and culture of our time? What ciphers are calling out to you? What's inviting you to explore these deeper mysteries of the human condition?
This has been such a rich, deep dive. It's challenging. I feel like we've only just begun to explore the depths of Jasper's ideas.
We have, and I think that really speaks to the depth and the complexity of his thinking. He doesn't give us, those easy answers, but he invites us to keep asking those difficult questions.
Yeah.
To really embrace the mystery, to see those experiences that we often label as negative or pathological, to see them as potential pathways to profound insight and creative expression.
Well said. Before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I'd love to hear your final thoughts on this whole journey into melancholy and creativity and Jasper's view on what it means to be human. What are your key takeaways?
One of the biggest takeaways for me from all of this is that we really need to rethink our whole relationship with discomfort.
Discomfort.
We live in a world that's just so obsessed with happiness.
Right.
Chasing those dopamine hits,
Yeah.
But Jaspers, he makes a really, really strong case that running from all the dark stuff, running from the melancholy, from the anxieties, maybe that's actually preventing us from reaching our full potential as humans.
So it's like the very things that we try to avoid,
Right.
those experiences that make us uncomfortable, maybe those actually hold the key to unlocking, a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world around us.
Exactly. Remember how Jaspers talked about melancholy being a limit situation?
Yeah.
Those experiences that really push us, that force us to confront the big questions.
Yeah, the big questions about life and death and meaning and all that.
Exactly. And he saw those experiences, those limit situations, as potential catalysts for growth, for self-discovery, even for, creative breakthroughs.
It's so counterintuitive though, right?
It is.
Because we're conditioned to think that happiness, that's the goal.
Yeah.
And anything that makes us feel bad,
Right, you got to avoid it.
it's something to get rid of. But what if those negative emotions, what if they're actually trying to tell us something? Like what if they're signposts? What if they're pointing us toward a deeper truth?
That's what's so amazing about Jasper's work. He challenges us to question those assumptions.
Yeah.
To look beyond the surface, to consider the possibility that those things that we often label as bad or unhealthy, maybe they're actually essential parts of what it means to be human.
It's like he's saying, instead of trying to fit ourselves into this prepackaged idea of what it means to be happy, to be well-adjusted,
Right.
maybe we need to embrace the messiness, the complexity, the full spectrum of human emotion.
Exactly. And that includes embracing the discomfort.
Yeah.
The discomfort of melancholy, the questions that it raises, and the potential that it holds for creative exploration. Remember, he saw melancholy as a cipher.
Right, a cipher.
A symbol pointing towards something bigger, something beyond what we can fully grasp with our rational minds.
So it's like a key, like it
Yeah.
unlocks this hidden door that leads us into this whole other realm of deeper understanding and connection with something beyond ourselves.
You nailed it. And that brings us back to that core idea of transcendence. And for Jaspers, this wasn't about religion in the traditional sense.
Not about a specific god or...
No. It's more about that ultimate ground of being, that source of meaning and purpose that's beyond our everyday experience.
So it's less about, believing in a specific god or following a set of rules.
Right.
And more about that feeling, that sense of awe and wonder and being connected to something much, much bigger than ourselves.
Exactly. And Jaspers is suggesting that melancholy, with all its challenges, all of its discomfort, It can actually be, it can be a pathway to that kind of transcendent experience.
It's almost like those moments of deep sadness,
Yeah.
of existential angst. Like they can actually like crack open our perception of reality just a little bit,
Yeah.
and allow us to glimpse something beyond the everyday,
Yeah.
something beyond those limitations of our ordinary lives.
That is such a beautiful way to put it. And it connects right back to, that idea we were talking about earlier about how each era has its own form of madness.
Right.
Maybe, just maybe, those individuals who are the most in tune with the madness of their time, they're also the ones who are most likely to, to experience those moments of transcendence.
Those glimpses into the deeper mysteries.
Exactly.
It makes you wonder if those experiences that we label as mental illness, maybe they're actually attempts to break free from the constraints of our limited perception. Like to tap into something more expansive, more connected, more in tune with the rhythms of the universe.
That's a really profound thought, and it brings us back to another one of Jasper's key takeaways. That communication, especially when it comes to these deeper truths.
Yeah.
It can't always be direct or literal. He talked about those ciphers, those symbols and those metaphors that point towards something that's just beyond our rational understanding.
And he saw art as one of the most powerful ways to communicate those deeper truths, right?
He did. He believed that artists, especially those who are grappling with, melancholy, with other forms of madness, they were able to translate their experiences into a language, that could resonate with other people on this really deep level.
Think about like Van Gogh, Strindberg, Kierkegaard, Nietzsche.
All of them.
All those figures that Jaspers kept coming back to. Their work is so powerful because it speaks to something beyond, beyond the realm of reason. Something that touches us on this visceral emotional level.
It's like they're giving voice to those whispers of the other, the ones that we all sense but maybe can't quite articulate ourselves.
Yeah, and that's the magic of art, isn't it?
It is. It lets us connect with something so much larger than ourselves, something that transcends all those limitations of our individual perspectives.
This has been such a journey.
It really has.
I feel like I have this whole new understanding of melancholy and creativity and what it means to be human.
Me too. Jasper's work, it's so rich, it's so challenging. It's like he's opened up this whole new way of seeing the world for me.
You know what the best part is?
What's that?
He doesn't give us all the answers. He invites us to keep exploring, to keep questioning, keep diving deeper into those mysteries of existence.
It's a journey. It's an ongoing process, this journey of discovery that, it never really ends. And who knows, maybe along the way we'll have our own encounters with the other, those moments of transcendence that remind us of the interconnectedness of all things.
Well, on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive into the world of melancholy, of creativity, and those profound insights of Karl Jaspers. It's been incredible, and I hope you, dear listener, have enjoyed it as much as we have.
And to our listeners, we encourage you to take what you've learned today and keep exploring.
Yeah.
Embrace the discomfort, embrace those questions, embrace those mysteries. Who knows? Who knows what you might discover? The depths are, they're waiting.
Until next time, keep diving.